Okay. So, how helpful was your college degree or subjects in college helpful in the role you're working today?
Work from around, let's say, energy transactions to mergers and acquisitions to banking laws and capital markets, listing IPOs. To succeed as a corporate lawyer, you do need to have a very good commercial understanding, which unfortunately these days law schools do not necessarily provide.
So, hey guys, welcome back to season one and episode six of Life at Work. I am your host Devaki, and today I'm joined by an investment fund lawyer, Mukund Arora. So, Mukund, how are you doing today?
All well, Devagya, thank you so much.
How are you doing in your
Devagya,
job?
I'm in the middle of a couple of transactions as we speak, and life is pretty hectic as you can imagine as a lawyer. But before that, allow me to, take this moment to thank you for getting me here. I think what you're doing is deeply meaningful because, as I can understand, a couple of years ago, I was in a situation where I looked up materials online, any advice or guidance I could get to understand where I should. And this, uh, I mean, for whoever your viewers are going to be, I think it's a fantastic way to get some guidance out there. So, all thanks to you for that and for also considering me worthy of it.
Let's hope for that. I hope to see some comments or question below in the near future, or we'll see how it goes. So, Mukund, I first question, like, could you explain what do you do actually in your day-to-day work? Like, how does your day look
Absolutely.
like from morning till evening?
Absolutely. Well, that's a fantastic question that you can pose to a lawyer. So, I am a corporate lawyer, and in corporate law, you have a variety of practice areas and specialties. As you can imagine, there are a lot of specialties when you approach a doctor. Somebody is there for your heart, somebody for your brain, somebody for your nerves, and so on. Um, Lawyers also practice their work in a similar fashion. Some of them are criminal lawyers, but the primary difference is that some are criminal lawyers and some are corporate lawyers. As corporate lawyers, we do not go to a courtroom. We mostly have a desk jobs. We mostly have a desk job, sorry, and our primary work is to assist companies and businesses enter into all kinds of complex legal transactions and help them from a business legal perspective. We look at the firm where I currently work at. We do all kind. It's a multi-service firm and it's a pan-India firm. So we do work from around, let's say, energy transactions to mergers and acquisitions to banking laws and capital markets, listing IPOs, uh, telecommunication and media, and so forth, and also disputes. My particular practice area is asset management and investment funds, and my role involves setting up and formation of venture capital and private equity and hedge fund structures in India. Now, as you can imagine, work is mostly around regulations, law, business, but in simple terms, to put it in the most simplest ways, we help big MNCs, conglomerates, businesses, startups uh, do their business from enter into, let's say, a business market to exits to from every step of their way as a business, help them with their legal issues and so forth, and for that we are essentially corporate lawyers. um, I work with a tier one law firm in India, and my primarily I start my day with I basically we start a bit early. We start at, let's say, around 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. and the day mostly looks like we start a morning by checking our emails, and from, let's say, a couple of hours we have our meetings with clients. So I'm normally, since I'm a junior lawyer currently working with some partners and senior associates, my job is mostly to, at least in the first half of the day, to sit with partners and associates in the meetings, provide them research inputs, take call notes with clients, assist them in various ways. Um, and on the later part of the day, we sit and we draft most of our documents, research. Documents are very complex, big contracts, prospectuses of companies and funds, and we do a lot of legal research. We have multiple discussions with our team discussions, client discussions, and a lot of drafting. The work can get super hectic on a normal day. You can expect to do from a minimum of 10 to anything about even 15 hours a day. Therefore, life in a law firm can be pretty hectic.
So that's very like complicated, I would say. For a as a fresher role, it's um, taking toll for a person. It's a very demanding job, I believe.
I absolutely agree. I mean, um, it is clearly not easy to start off as a junior lawyer, given that you've just exited law school and you're used to just working in a law school and basically, everything else in life caters to you. However, when you enter a law firm, there are clients that depend on you, that trust you for their matters, and you ought to give them the best advice possible. And they come to you and you charge them a premium rate much higher than the market because they expect a certain level of service and availability. In that process, it does tire you out, and there are days in a law firm. Therefore, absolutely difficult to make this transition from school to law school to a law firm, but it works out with time.
Okay, so when you were looking for a job or initially, so did you plan to go in this particular investment firm role, or this is something you discovered later when you started your studying or your internships? How did it work out for you?
That is by far that's a fantastic question. I think that's a brilliant question because as law students normally aren't much aware about the kind of opportunities that lay ahead for them. The world is so huge, the businesses are expanding at a rate nobody knows, and I think law students have millions of opportunities in front of them. Now, when I started law school, I was clear about the fact that I did not want to get into criminal or civil law, which essentially means becoming a courtroom lawyer. So somehow I had some clarity that I would enter into corporate law. The reason I chose not to do litigation or criminal work in India was primarily, I mean, there are certain attributes attached to doing litigation in India, but primarily being you really have to struggle a lot in your initial years working under a lawyer. The pay sometimes can be really less, and working in a courtroom may not is not something that everyone would aspire to do. I personally prefer to and I also felt that I had a knack for businesses in advising businesses and understanding businesses. I thought my personal skill set would apply in, let's say, financial, like in assisting clients with their financial, legal, or corporate legal aspects. I think that's something that appealed to me more. In terms of practice areas, as you enter law school, as a junior law school student, you at an initial time do not even understand what practice areas are. Over time, let's say in your third year of your fifth year law degree, you start doing your internships, you start writing research articles, you start networking in the industry, and then it's all about hitting and trying. In my personal experience, I interned with a couple of leading law firms. I interned at AZB and Partners, where I did mergers and acquisitions, energy and infrastructure. Then I interned at Khaitan and Company, where for the first time I did investment funds. Then I also had the opportunity to do an internship at an international law firm called Evershot Sutherland in Dubai, where I did some work with international banking and finance transactions. And then I did some work with the technology sector. And overall, it was all these experiences that eventually made me decide that investment funds as a practice area, I think I understand and would want to build a career in. So overall, it's mostly about exploring whatever possibilities come your way.
Okay, so um, from the internships, or I would say this is a huge amount of experience you have as a fresher at like working at multiple positions at various law firms. So
Mhm.
if a common man looks at a lawyer, so our perspective is like who has never been to a court or who has never been in touch with a corporate law. So most of our perception is from movies or series. If we see Suits or some Indian movies on court law. How different is that from the real life?
Again, fantastic question. Honestly, real life lawyering is nothing like what you would expect in what happens in Suits or let's say Jolly LLB. In fact, it's kind of funny. I was recently watching that movie, and there was nothing about that movie that, as a lawyer, I could relate to. I think in life, when you get, and this is mostly for disputes lawyers that go to courtroom and so forth, their life can be probably more exciting. Let's say when you're representing a high-profile criminal, or you're prosecuting them, or let's say you're representing a movie star or a movie star son or a daughter, and you have all that media attention, or let's say you're working on a case, a very high profile, let's say a terrorism case and so forth. Life can get super interesting at times when you're doing those kinds of work. But as a corporate lawyer, when you have a desk job, there are two aspects. One is if you're working with a good lawyer and a good team at a top firm, then you do tend to advise the world's biggest businesses. In funds specifically, I am very lucky to have the opportunity to work with the best clients in the industry, the best and the biggest, which are essentially global organizations, biggest investors, banks, funds, and so forth. So the clientele from that perspective is really premium C-suite. However, the work can get super mundane at times. It is not that exciting. At the end of the day, you're still sitting with your laptop in your cubicle and typing on Word documents. And for a larger time of your life, that is essentially what you would be doing as a corporate lawyer. Our work is primarily just sitting and working on Word docs for contracts and memorandums throughout the day. The difference is that since we represent big businesses, and sometimes you provide such high profile advice that it can have a real life implication. It normally does have a real life financial implication to how well or not how well your clients do.
So, what level of financial understanding you need to have of the capital markets or the banking system or the economics to work in this role?
Oh, fantastic question again. So I think that's very important. And see, to succeed as a corporate lawyer, you do need to have a very good commercial understanding, which unfortunately these days law schools do not necessarily provide. The key difference between law firms in India and law firms abroad in the UK or in the US are that those firms also take into consideration a junior lawyers or a junior entry positions uh, commercial or a financial capability, like in terms of how well they understand these nuances, as opposed to in India. In India, if you're sitting for a role, um, probably what's the most important factors are going to be your CGPA and the college that you come from, and how well your internships are. But broadly speaking, to succeed as a corporate lawyer in the longer run, you do need to tend to have those abilities. And in my personal experience, I made it a point to listen to a lot of financial podcasts, read newspapers to have a sense of what's happening in the world. As a junior, it's very difficult for you to get into the nitty-gritties of those transactions and to understand what's truly happening. But just to make a simple effort is something that can also go a long way. But broadly speaking, I've seen some of the best lawyers and the senior lawyers, they are equally good at uh, these aspects as well. So overall, it is incredibly necessary to succeed in India. It may not be an absolute necessity to join to get into a big law firm, but uh, absolutely it is something that all students should focus in doing.
So, talking about the investment fund, so finance again, what are the some common terminologies you might use in your day-to-day working?
Absolutely. So uh, investment funds is a very technical practice area. In fact, it is more commercial than most corporate law practice areas that we see. Other practice areas have, let's say, there's a banking transaction. So it's easier for a normal person to understand what an interest is, what a loan is. Are you working in a loan document? So who's the borrower? Who's the lender? Those are simple terms in a banking transaction. But when you're a funds lawyer and you're representing the formation of, let's say, uh, when you're structuring a private equity fund or you're structuring a hedge fund, then there are people who are putting in their money to sponsor the fund, who are called sponsors. Then there are investment managers who manage people's money, and then there are contributors or investors who take their who give money to the fund, and the investment manager manages their money, and then they put the money into investee companies or portfolio companies to do those deals. Overall, there are very specific terms. You have
So cost of
complex terms like
equity and cost of debt is something you work with, right? This is also
um, we do we no. So that is more on the so cost of equity and cost of debt is something that an M&A lawyer would work with while structuring a merger transaction or an acquisition transaction. I would do more with, let's say, a gift bag, or let's say an investment manager or a management fee or a performance fee of the manager, or let's say structuring a trust. It's mostly a lot of structuring that goes into place, less of transactional work, as you can imagine, that would be there in a merger transaction.
okay. So how helpful was your college degree or subjects in college helpful in the role you're working today?
Very little, actually. Uh, you can understand. So, my degree is absolutely essential to become a lawyer. No lawyer can practice law in India without having a law degree. So, from that perspective, it was absolutely essential to get a law degree. But I did not necessarily study any courses in college or have any subjects in college that taught me the nitty-gritties of an investment funds practice. Yes, I had a course called investment law that touched a bit around what funds are and what categories of funds are and how do you work with SEBI and all of that. But they did not essentially really go into detail. Most of the work that you do as a corporate lawyer, you really get trained from the go-get as a junior. And there are only very few courses that are taught to you in a law school. I think the most critical aspect that law school gives to you is critical thinking. So if you have that ability, then you can essentially try to understand whatever complex concepts anybody can pose to you. And it's just about understanding structures and having the ability to do that. It's basically law school gives you the ability to build a certain stamina to work long nights, to push, work under pressure through deadlines, tight deadlines, and be really, really competitive and be just some aspects of critical analysis and understanding. These are basically just certain values, I would say, that law school gives you, but not specifically subjects.
Okay, can you list down the top three skills required for this role?
Great question again. Uh, I think the number one skill would be dealing with pressure, because you deal with such a huge number of huge clients that expect you to deliver at such a fast rate. You are expected to churn out documents, do billable hours, and everything comes to you at a pressure. There are going to be five people in the firm, all five seniors, asking for 10 different documents at the same time. And it is going to be up to you to how you're going to manage that. So you have to deal with a lot of pressure, and pressure can make or break you. Therefore, so, you really have to understand how you're going to deal with pressure. And everybody has their own ways. But I think the person who can deal with the pressure the best will be a great lawyer. The second aspect would be attention to detail. Since you work with such complex details, such complex names, I have in my short career, I've seen people lose so much money going to the smallest of details, such as, let's say, missing a comma in the whole document, which can change the whole context of a certain paragraph or the meaning that was intended. Therefore, attention to detail is completely utmost. As I can remember once, I had joined and there was an incident where in a document, instead of, so there was a company called XYZ, let's say Limited, and in their Limited, they had written LTD dot. And in my document, I had written the full form Limited, Limited. And although the document did not go out from an internal perspective that had such a huge implication, I understood the kind of work that I was dealing with. and therefore how important attention to detail is. You cannot even miss out smallest of the details. And the third one is simply critical thinking. Not everything is read to the letter of the law. And as a lawyer, you are expected to come up with some creative solutions, complex solutions to help your clients. And that can only happen if you have some understanding of the work that happens in the world and just simply the ability to think on your feet and come up with solutions.
So I think these areas you person will be able to develop on if they participate in fests or competitions in their college days,
Indeed. Yes.
right? So my next question would be around the pay. How is the pay in this role?
Pay is, in fact, um, pretty good as opposed to most industries that you would see in India. Um, I would not comment on the pay that a litigation lawyer or a courtroom lawyer would receive. That varies across the work you do. You can be making, let's say, a courtroom lawyer can be making 5,000 rupees a month to, let's say, 50 lakhs a month or even 5 crores a month, depending on your seniority. So that is pretty flexible. However, in corporate law, the salaries are pretty standard. In a tier one law firm, you can expect your fixed salary, uh, like your full on salary, including your fixed and bonus, to start from anywhere from around 18 lakhs to go as high as 23 lakhs a year. And this is a salary that you receive as a fresher while entering a tier one law firm. There are certain law firms that pay their freshers upwards of 23 to 25 lakhs as well, just when they start out as a junior lawyer. However, the top five, six law firms or the top 10 law firms do not pay less than 18 to 20 lakhs a year standard for all law firms. And as you gain more experience with time, they reassess your role after every year and you have higher increments, higher bonuses, and the pay in that sense is quite comfortable. In tier two firms, it's relatively lesser. You have a larger chunk of, let's say, 20 to 30 firms that pay their entry level lawyers, let's say, from a number of 12 lakhs to 14 lakhs. A lot of firms have that standard, and a tier three or a lower band law firm or a boutique or a smaller law firm would pay somewhere around 6 to 10 lakhs to their junior lawyers. But the entry market standards are pretty defined across tier one law firms, and you would not really expect anybody to be receiving less than 18 to 19 lakhs, at least now. The senior associates at some roles, let's say after receiving 4 years of experience, the same folks who join as freshers in 4 to 5 years can expect to get a pay of upwards of, let's say, 45 to 50, 55 lakhs a year. And if you make it to partner in 10 years, then you can expect to be paid anywhere higher than a crore. Senior partners also make tens of crores a year. Um, and leading lawyers make tens and tens of crores. We do not have those numbers, but junior lawyer salaries are pretty standard that way.
So what does growth look like in this role? Like it takes 1 year, 2 year, or 3 years to get promoted to the next role, or it's a performance based.
It is actually performance based and it is also automatic to a certain extent. In my current role, I have joined as a fresher. So, till I become a senior associate, which is still 4 years, I will have my band increased. So, let's say I'm currently an A0, which is an associate with zero experience. In the next financial year, I will have an automatic promotion to A1, which is an associate with 1 year of experience, till A3 or an A4. And then you have some financial increments. Once you become, once you have received 3 to 4 years of experience, then you start getting considered for a senior associate role, which is pretty performance based. And once you qualify for that, depending on your firm's process, you can expect a huge chunk of your salary getting retained and going upward.
So you work in a service based company. So it like the client comes in with the requirement, you get onboarded to the project and you work for the client, and then you move on to other project. This is how it works, right?
Absolutely, but in a commercial law firm, I can be working with 20 clients at the same time. Since one lawyer cannot just sit and work for a single client, since we expect to get a lot of clients, I tend to have meetings with 5 to 6 clients in a day, do research for let's say 10 clients, provide different advice, documents. As a junior lawyer in my current organization, I'm on a day-to-day basis. I assist 5 to 6 clients on a daily basis, different clients on a daily basis.
So I'm sure it helps in getting a lot of exposure and it will help you in the future. Do you believe it, or like how is it?
Absolutely. I mean, working with different clients who have different needs. And, most of these are huge international clients, some pension fund based in Singapore or some sovereign fund based in Canada or an international financial organization based in Europe. You tend to get, the work quality is second to none. It is the best possible exposure that you can receive as a junior lawyer. There is nothing better than that. And again, the opportunities and the learning experiences can be endless with that regard. It does give you a certain sense of confidence, and I think it does shape you. It can be challenging. The work is definitely challenging given the needs of our clients, but irrespective, it does build in those capabilities for a
So,
lawyer.
so for example, is someone watching this video in the final year of their college or someone who has just entered in the field of law? So, what is that one subject or one skill they should brush on really well?
Um, I would say two subjects or skills, which are both subjects and skills. Number one being contract. Contract law is a subject which is taught to you from day one in law school. In most colleges, it is. For some colleges, you're taught contract law in your second year. But I still practice contract law today on a daily basis, and the concepts that I learned back in first year sometimes still do come handy. So you cannot succeed as a corporate lawyer if you do not have a great hold on the concepts of contract. So whatever level you're at, if you're a senior level lawyer or a junior level lawyer, it is incredibly important that you build in the skill. At the end of the day, you are going to be negotiating with an opposing counsel or a counterparty counsel. You do not want to fumble at a point of law that is taught to a first year law school student. Having said that, the second one would be the Constitution. It is also a subject which is taught to you in the law school, but studying the Constitution does really give you an insight into why most of the laws are formed, what is the reason behind that, and again, the ability to critically think and just generally constitutional law helps you understand society in general, society that we live in, and to my knowledge, it has helped me and get a better sense of critical analysis. So these two particular subjects or skills, vice versa.
So, are there any myths around your role which you're currently working at?
Um, uh, I used to think those are the myths, but turns out they are pretty contemporary as I work in a law firm. One thing that most people told me before I joined a law firm was that life is going to be pretty tough in terms of your workload and your life, and you're practically going to have no time left to yourself. I did not initially believe it, but working in a law firm does give you that sense of, uh, restriction that yes, indeed, you do not really get a lot of time to yourself. You are mostly working on documents till midnight, and there's going to be high pressure. And as opposed to a myth, it did come out to be true. Um, Otherwise, no real myths. I think most things that you hear about the corporate law industry are pretty true. Anybody who's been working in a big firm would tell you how real those things are.
So, what is the motivation behind doing this all day?
That's a fantastic question. Sometimes you can tend to question your motivation, but then you've got to come back and think why you're doing it at the end of the day. And to me, it was all about my interest. I think financial law is something that naturally came to me. I would sit and normally think about how things could be structured. I genuinely enjoyed reading about financial crime, financial laws, investment funds, transactions. You do tend to work with the best people. You work with the best minds in the industry that are highly talented and intelligent. You work with brilliant people who tend to support you across the work you do. And just in general, it involves a lot of thinking and creativity. I cannot imagine a role that would personally fit me better, where I could contribute any better. My role requires me to think on my feet, to be more creative, to solve very complex challenges, and it constantly pushes me to my boundaries. And that is one thing I genuinely enjoy about that. I cannot imagine doing anything else that could make me think that much. There is not a single work that I ever do in a law firm that I can consider boring. Everything I do makes me learn, and a huge chunk of my role requires me to think. I can be advising a client on a complex issue of law, and SEBI can come up with a new law on the second day. And therefore, the challenge is completely on me as a lawyer to provide the best interpretation and the business and the financial advice to my client basis the law or the regulation that SEBI has come out with. And to me, that is a challenge, and that is something I truly enjoy.
So I would say you're really lucky that you found a fit for yourself, because most people today are not able to find it very quickly, or they find it later stage in their lives.
I agree. I think of the mistakes that I've made in life, I believe that studying law and becoming a lawyer is by far the best decision I've ever made. I cannot imagine myself doing anything else. I initially, before joining law school, I thought I could get into finance or maybe even journalism, but as I understand now, this is indeed the perfect role for me. But again, you never know what future holds for you.
That is true. Well, so one last piece of advice you would like to share.
Um, I, as you can imagine, in most people's lives and in most people's careers, um, there are ups and downs, and people go through good and bad times. In a 5-year law degree and in such a long career that can go on to as high as 30, 40, 50 years for a lot of people. Not all days are going to be good. You're going to have months of time when you're not getting the results that you want, and you can be stuck in a job that you're not happy with, or you're not getting the role that you dreamt of, or maybe something is not working out. My advice is simply going to be to truly believe in yourself and have a grit and passion for what you do. I think grit is something, it's just what it essentially means is having the stamina to put in a long term effort towards something specific that you're determined to do uh, for a long period of time. Do not let anything break your grit, and have some self confidence that no matter whatever position that you put into, you can come out of it um, unscarred, and you can move on to better things in life. And I think that is something that has helped me out during the times where I've struggled as a law student and even as a junior lawyer. I've been in pretty tough situations where, let's say, I haven't been able to secure an internship role for months, or haven't not able to see the results I can achieve. I've been trying to achieve in my role, and the only thing that has gotten me out of it is self confidence and a belief in yourself.
So I think that has applicability across roles, not only for the lawyer.
Absolutely,
And yeah.
absolutely.
So that was it from my end. If you have any questions, make sure to put them in the comments below, and we will have a look and try to answer them. And thank you, Mukund, for taking out time and be here for this session. I hope it helps people who are watching.
I do indeed hope that this reaches people where it can truly help somebody in their career. Personally, I've been very lucky, and I'm super grateful to the people who've helped me. And trust me, there are a lot of these people who've come to my support, and I hope it helps someone. And again, I want to thank you for doing such fantastic work. I think this is again incredibly meaningful. So thanks a lot for that, Devagya, and for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Mukund.
Thank you.